alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the overall political situation, of course, as far as the elections are concerned. When the Election Commission writes for the details of, citing the details of why elections in May are not possible. We'll be talking about the ramifications of this. Further to this, of course, we've seen other developments as far as the PMLN is concerned, and the fact that all stakeholders at this time feel that holding elections before October, which is the date the Election Commission has given out, seem don't seem possible at this time. We'll be talking a little bit about that. We'll also be talking about overall, as far as Zaman Park incident is concerned, the government has decided to make a GIT on this. What are the ramifications of this kind of a political overall atmosphere in the country, where we are seeing an inability again of parties to come to some kind of a decision together? A dialogue, whatever one may call it, seems to be a distinct impossibility at this time. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me today Barrister Safiullah Ghauri. Thank you so much for joining us today. We also have with us Saif, Jamshed, Baryar, who's a political analyst. Thank you for joining us. And Javed Jadoon, who is a senior journalist. Thank you for being with us. Safiullah, like we were earlier talking about, certainly this is a detailed, as far as a document, as far as the Election Commission is concerned, and they've said that their inability to have the elections by on the date that was earlier given out is citing detailed reasons, saying that they don't have the kind of assistance. Neither is the army willing to provide the kind of assistance that is needed, neither is the judiciary. So there are detailed reasons. How are you overall looking at this document, and how are you overall looking at this development?
Thank you, Mahrukh. Mahrukh, if you might recall, it was on your show several months ago that we were discussing this exact same topic, and I suggested that elections should be based on two particular grounds. One, the provision of security, and the other, the provision of funds. And since then we have had multiple shows in which we have discussed this time and again, and I'm very glad to see that the Election Commission has adopted the same line of reasoning, because this line of reasoning is legal. And this is the first detailed document by the Election Commission detailing their stance from a legal perspective. They have given different case laws. They have given examples of earlier times when elections were also postponed due to a variety of reasons. And in light of the idea that elections need not just be elections, elections need to be fair and free. So where are fair and free elections going to come from? How are elections going to be fair if there is not sufficient security? How are they going to be free if you don't have the funds, if people cannot do what they have to do? Where is all of this going to happen from? And the fact that the Election Commission for the first time, and this has been an ongoing debate, they've come to the courts, they've tried they've given their stance, all of which happened in a very lukewarm manner. But I think now the fact that the Election Commission has been emboldened by the government sat together along with the army chief, all of them took a principled decision, probably conveyed it to the Election Commission, and then after the Election Commission coming forward with a heavy-hitting document.
But Safiullah,
for the Supreme Court to consider.
It's about the inability also. It's not just about not wanting to hold the elections. What the Election Commission is essentially saying is that they can't do it because they don't have the necessary, like you said, they don't have the funds, they don't have the assistance, they don't have the paraphernalia that requires these elections.
To conduct fair and free elections.
There's also that opinion that elections all over the country should be held. Of course, the government has not hesitated in voicing that opinion. And let me take Saif Saab on this also, that there should be elections piecemeal, and the fact that provinces like Punjab will have them first, and then that will have its own ramifications on overall elections, which are again scheduled to be held in October.
Thank you for having me today, Mahrukh. I think that although I'd like to differ with Barrister Saab a little, because when there was a particular Supreme Court order, so I think the Election Commission giving out to say that the elections in Punjab cannot happen before 8th of October, it was a bit, I can say it was a bit legally challenging, because there has been a lot of legal uncertainty over it, and today even in the media, as I was observing before coming to your program, there was a great deal of debate going on. Now, the perimeters of legality on one side, but I'd definitely second what Barrister Saab has said, because the very premise of the elections not happening at the moment, that's a financial reason. And given that you are in middle of an economic crisis, and given that you're on verge of default, so I think today in this political polarity, even if elections happen, the consequences of them happening would be greater than the consequences of them not happening right now. And this is something that maybe with an exercise of introspection we can think, if today elections happen and let's, for some odd reason, let's assume that PTI doesn't get the power bank that it is aiming for, they will simply say that the elections weren't fair enough. So maybe, I think, like I said last time as well, we need a little breathing space, and we need a little fiscal space as well. So in terms of legality, that's an entire debate altogether. But in terms of logistics, I think calling the elections so immediately, and
but
given the fact...
do you think it's going to take that amount of this couple of months is going to give us that breathing space? That's another question.
From my reason of economics, I believe that whenever you are trying to adjust your economy with the SAPs that the IMF provides, it requires a minimum of 180 days to sort of for your economy to digest the macroeconomic changes and adjustments. So I think the very reason that we are taking the elections forward to October maybe is maybe a little bit of fiscal stability in the country can arrive, and it's optimistic for the lenders as well.
Let me go to Javed Saab. I'll come back to you. Javed Saab, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure, I can.
Javed Saab, do you think, I mean, the legality of things on one side, also, you know, overall, as far as the political situation at this time is concerned, certainly, you know, things are not great. There's a lot of polarization. There's also a lot of, you know, one has to acknowledge there is simple, you know, the kind of aggressiveness we've seen, the kind of, you know, across the board talk that we see today is perhaps unprecedented in a lot of ways. Do you agree?
Thank you very much, Mahrukh. I think if you, I would like to look at the decision with the political dimension. Legal, of course, it is going to go to the Supreme Court of Pakistan, and the apex court will decide whether the decision of the Election Commission was right or not. But as far as the political dimension is concerned, Mahrukh, I think it will have extremely grave consequences for Pakistan's politics for two reasons. One, it is unprecedented, never happened before. And secondly, the perception being created among the people of Pakistan by and large, and in the media as well, that Pakistan Muslim League and in particular, and Pakistan Democratic Movement in general, they are running away from the election, given the economic difficulties and the kind of popularity dip they have taken in the last 11 months. Because extremely difficult and challenging situation as far as the economy is concerned. You are going to pay about $7 billion in debt servicing till June 2023. That is the financial year which is going to end in June. And in the next year, that is the next financial year starting from 1st of July, Pakistan is going to Pakistan must have about $25 billion to pay back the debts and the debt servicing as well. So I think if you look at the situation holistically, what is the guarantee that situation is going to have a paradigm shift in October, and it will be a situation very comfortable for the government, economy will be back on the track, which seems a very far-fetched scenario, because I've given the two figures, the figure of $7 billion which Pakistan has to pay by June, where the money is going to come from. The rollovers of $2 billion on part of China, $2 billion on part of Saudi Arabia, and $1 billion on part of United Arab Emirates. We are still short of $2 billion.
But Javed Saab, what is the guarantee as far as the other side is concerned? They say that, you know, what is the guarantee that we will have the money by October then?
I mean, nobody has a guarantee that they are going to have the required amount to pay back the foreign debts. And even Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, if they believe that when they come into power, they will be able to make a turnaround as far as economy is concerned, that would be extremely unrealistic approach, given the kind of difficulties Pakistan is faced with today. Inflation skyrocketing, the highest in the history of Pakistan, 46.7%, and it is going to rise further with the passage of weeks and months. So I think any government... So
things are not going to be easy for anyone, you know, whenever the elections are held, whoever... whoever comes into power.
Yes.
And right now, of
Yeah,
course, this government has also not made secret of the fact that things are very difficult for them. It's all over. It's easy for everyone to see plainly, as far as negotiations with the IMF are concerned. Overall, the situation, like you said, with other donors are concerned, our relationship with other countries are concerned, all of those things are at a record difficult time, as far as this government is concerned. So they've made no secret of that.
Mahrukh, if you look at the real problem with the IMF is that is the external finances. They are asking Pakistan to get written guarantees from Saudi Arabia and UAE and China as well that Pakistan will have the required amount of $7 billion in their kitty by June 2023. And unfortunately, Saudi Arabia and UAE, they are not giving written sovereign guarantees. Verbal assurances are not being accepted by the IMF. So I think for every political party, it is a huge challenge. What is required of them? Now they must sit on the negotiating table. The dates can be sort of reevaluated. They can be fixed somewhere between October 2023 and 30th of April 2023. Not an impossible kind of a situation. As they say, the politics is art of possible. But why it is not the art of possible in Pakistan? Why there are no sane elements on both the sides, on both the opposing camps, politically speaking? Why can't they sit together on the negotiating table, decide a date which is acceptable to both of the parties? But the problem with the PDM is they believe that they can drag the elections.
Of course,
till
as far
October,
as IMF is concerned, we don't know. I mean, these are all
the
reports, and what the
situation.
actual situation is, of course, we'll know. As far as their agreement with the government is concerned, those things are, of course, in process at this time. I'll come back to you. Ji, Safiullah, as far as legally, the courts are concerned, this is, as far as the PTI is concerned, they are saying that this is a contempt. What is your legal opinion on this?
I think...
what was the court order, as far as the Supreme Court was concerned, and the Election Commission giving out this detailed document, does it constitute, in your opinion, a contempt?
This is something that's very funny, and I think this is also something that we've discussed on your show previously. When the court order came out, I mentioned that the Supreme Court has managed to shoot itself in the foot. And this is because the exact wording is that elections are to be held on 8th April or the minimal time thereafter. Okay. Now, what is the minimal time thereafter?
And of course, the Election Commission will decide.
Exactly. And how do you understand what minimal time is? Okay. So on that very front, a lot of debates have taken place. Many senior lawyers have spoken about what this is. People who go to the Supreme Court regularly, all of them stated that this is an anomaly in the language. The Supreme Court, when it gives directions, and sometimes they know that those directions will not be followed. We have seen a history of them saying, in almost every order that the Supreme Court gives, they'd say something like, do this in the next 2 weeks, 8th April, or in the next 2 weeks thereafter. Something of the sort. They always give you a cut-off time. In this case, there was no cut-off time. They left it to the discretion of the Election Commission. And therefore, the Election Commission, in its orders, has stated that they are using this discretion that has been granted to them by the Supreme Court, and have also referred to various judgments, such as the Workers' Party case, where discretion was given to the Election Commission, and the Election Commission has used it. So the idea that the Election Commission is operating out of any legality is something that is highly debatable. And this is why I'm very excited about the case that will go to the Supreme Court. Because once it goes to the Supreme Court, there will of course be a discussion on whether this is contempt or not, whether minimal should be thought of as 1 week or should be thought of as 1 year. As a student of law, I will also learn a great deal, and that's partly exciting for me. But also, the most exciting aspect of all of this is the fact that we will for the first time be discussing what the legalities are and to what extent...
It's up to the ambit of the Election Commission and the powers of the Election Commission within which they have to exercise.
Try and understand who can exercise what degree of power. Right now, what's happening is, the Election Commission is being seen almost as a quasi-governmental authority. It's not even being viewed as an independent authority that can give an independent judgment. And due to a variety of reasons, if you recall, even a couple of years ago, there was a big harangue about what the real powers of the Election Commission are, and if, for instance, a decision is given by the Election Commission, does its appeal lie before the Supreme Court or before the High Courts? Where does it stand? So the Supreme Court has not given us a clear direction on how to view the election commission, despite the fact
but
that...
in your opinion, and I know, I mean, I understand this is, you know, your own opinion on this, but as far as this document is concerned, this document at the election commission is quite comprehensive in its own, you know, way, and they've tried to deal with every angle as far as, you know, the Supreme Court, to satisfy the Supreme Court, and of course, do you feel that it's acted in its independent capacity? It's acted as an independent institution, of course.
100%. So a lot of people are obviously blaming the election commission for what it's done, and I've been reading.
As we've seen, I will go to Jamshed Sahab on this, but as we've seen in political parties, when they don't get the kind of result that they need,
then they start making everybody partisan, right? And that's what we have seen with the election commission. But I believe the election commission when it says that it is unable to hold elections. Let's leave aside the issues of security. Let's leave aside the issues of even finances, which are obviously necessary. But even if you were to leave those aside, in order to have elections, you need to have electoral rolls. You need to conduct a nationwide census. When has that census been done? How, if I come from a village, how do I know that now my children who are of voting age are going to be represented in the electoral rolls? And how do I know that their entry into the electoral rolls is being done in a proper, free and fair manner?
But Safiullah, then the question invariably is that will all those factors, I mean, will the election commission satisfy all these objections till October? It's not very far away.
Maybe not, and that's what's more interesting, because in order to have all of these, you still need security and you still need finances,
and you still need perhaps more time than
perhaps you need more time. But you know, I'll concur with my friend here that at the end of the day, what matters is that we are able to conduct these in a proper manner, rather than an exercise in futility to satisfy some egos. Because what's the real problem here? Right now, the real problem is that one political party is taking advantage of the fact that another political party has sacrificed its political capital. Why was that political capital sacrificed? In order to satisfy a multilateral donor, which demanded that there be inflation in Pakistan, which demanded that subsidies be withdrawn, and in order to get those loans which were necessary for Pakistan's sustenance, this was a necessary sacrifice. One political party has decided to put itself upon the cross. Now that the other political party knows that one is down, it's kicking a dog when it's down. Literally, that's what's happening. They want to just take the best possible advantage. They want to push for it, and they of course understand that the Pakistani public is not educated enough to understand the dynamics of macroeconomics. They don't understand why the loans are coming, why there's inflation.
I think I'm going to disagree. I'm going to disagree on that, because as you know, I'm a big advocate of giving the voter all, you know, as far as the voter is concerned. I think they're underestimated, their you know, their intelligence and their ability to see things for the way they are. Jamshed Sahab, overall, as far as the situation at this time is concerned, political dialogue, we keep on talking about it. We keep on talking about the stakeholders coming together. That hasn't happened. Doesn't look like it's going to happen. But we've also, the political capital that, you know, Safiullah is talking about, we've also seen overall, how do you think the situation is going to alter as far as, you know, the PTI is concerned? They're at this time, they want elections now. They talk about constitution, they talk about laws, but the political capital that they want to bank on, you know, how much of it will they lose if it's really as high as they think it is till October, in your opinion?
Thank you, Mahrukh. Well, the very fact of the matter is that I leave the legalities to Barrister Saab, and I'll just talk about the political dynamics of the debate. I said this earlier as well, and I'd say this again, that the political realities of the voting day are very different from the political realities before the voting day. And I think political momentum is something that even those parties can gain at the end that you've been thinking would certainly lose. So the first thing over here is that in such political polarity, even having the elections would be a very futile exercise. The very idea or the very essence of democracy is that you empower the public to vote and you empower the person to take the decisions for his future. But at the same time, difference of opinion needs to be tolerated in the future as well. You need to incorporate that difference of opinion, because tomorrow the shots would have a swing. The party that's sitting in the government might come to the opposition, the opposition might go into the government, and that's the beauty of democracy. The biggest problem over here is that when was the last time we actually had a charter of democracy? It was more than a decade ago. And after that charter, in fact, things started to improve.
Yes.
And if I look at the trajectory of politics, as a commentator of politics, if I look at that trajectory, in fact, Pakistan has seen a better era from 2011 to at least 2015 and 16, because one political party was in the majority, it was the government. Then there was another political party, the People's Party, they were in the opposition, but there was a working relationship. Democracy calls for a working relationship. What do you have the parliament for? If you are to take it out on the streets, if you want to bash each other on the streets.
Even when we look at, and correct me if I'm wrong, but even when we look at the People's Party being in the centre and the PMLN being in Punjab, it was, things were not, there was a working relationship that you mentioned. There was this kind of acrimony, this kind of aggressive style of politics, unfortunately, that we see now was not there.
One thing that I'd like to further add on to here is, I'm not a student of physics, but Newton's second law of motion is that every action has an equal and an opposite reaction. That is something that's happening out of the streets now.
Okay.
One political party, when they assert themselves beyond the law, when the court says that this is a particular warrant and that warrant needs to be put to force. And if a political leader says that everyone from maybe the second most populated city of the country can come out to his house and can start protecting him, where have you left the law? Where have you left the constitution? The problem is, earlier today, I said it out loud on a political talk show, on a TV talk show, that the clash of institutions results in the crash of the constitution. And this is ultimately one of those things that are the most detrimental in Pakistan's case. And whenever, in fact, Pakistan has suffered in the past 75 years, it has always been that there was clash of institutions, ultimately the constitution crashed. So it's time to maybe have a political charter and an economic charter. What's the problem in not calling the all parties conference? The government has taken an initiative. I think the opposition should show grace as well. They should be coming onto the tables and they should be talking.
I don't think the opposition is showing any grace anytime soon. I think, Javed Sahab, I'm right. As far as the opposition is concerned, there's clearly, they don't want to come to any kind of table. They don't want to talk. As far as, we saw Khwaja Asif speak to the media today, and he said that there is talk of talking to the establishment, but there's no talk of actual talking to political parties. In this kind of an environment, the future seems rather bleak.
Absolutely, Mahrukh, but let us not forget, when we talk about the kind of rapprochement between Pakistan People's Party and Pakistan Muslim League, and it took them more than 3 decades to develop the kind of maturity what is being talked about. As far as Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf is concerned, they were in power only for 3.5 years. That was the first stint in the parliament, and expecting the kind of maturity which was being talked about as far as the 2 main political parties were concerned, it will take them some time to reach that point. But the problem is not the political one. The problem is that the constitution, of course, is the most important pivot of any society, of any country, whether be that parliamentary form of democracy or the presidential. You need to have a constitution. The nation-state system, which started on the basis of evolving a society where you could have a dialogue among different sections, different segments of the society, different pressure groups or political parties, whatever you call them. But now the dialogue has become extinct as far as Pakistan is concerned. You are very right that the future seems to be extremely bleak as far as the political dialogue is concerned. Now, in such a circumstances, what can you expect? Judiciary has been made controversial. The decision they give in one party's favor becomes controversial as far as other political parties concerned, so vice versa. Now, the only, I think, the deciding factor remains the military establishment. But unfortunately, military establishment intervened a lot in Pakistan's politics, and the outgoing army chief admitted that they made a lot of mistakes. And the current leadership of Pakistan Army has made it very clear that they would like to remain apolitical as far as the political confrontation or standoff is concerned. Now, who is going to come in between? Aren't they able to resolve their own political disputes by way of dialogue? Because even we have heard that some civil society delegation met Imran Khan. He showed his willingness to engage with PDM leadership. But I think even media is divided. Unfortunately, we are all, I am part of the media, you are part of the media. We know that media has never been so divided on vested interest basis. One particular media gives a one particular angle and the other gives the other one. And public at large, the 220 million people are absolutely confused what is happening at the center stage. They want to believe one segment of the media, or they would like to believe the other segment of the media. The political commentators, the talk show hosts,
it's
etc.
unfortunately come to a point that, you know, when you whichever side you support, you know, has invariably you have a channel which is you know, which you know is going to follow that stance. So we don't know, you know, what's the actual situation as far as free and fair even journalism is concerned, unfortunately.
And besides journalism, Mahrukh, another important factor in Pakistan, demographic factor I would like to talk about, that is a youth bulge. A youth population which consists more than 60% of country's population. The millennials and now the Gen Z, they have been so familiar with the social media that they use it so effectively that they have become a real problem for any set of rulers in Pakistan. It is unbridled media, be that Pakistan or the United States of America or any other developed nation. As the social media has become a potent force, you really can't stop the flow of information reaching the common people. You ban one platform, another platform is available to the people. So I think the issues or the problems are very complex, Mahrukh, and you need to have a very holistic strategy and approach to deal with it. Society has become so divisive that now it will take a very, I think, very strong efforts on part of our political stakeholders to bridge the gap between those who are governing the people and the people themselves. I think there's a failure of governance, there is a failure of political system which has failed to deliver the way the modern political system should be delivering as far as the people are concerned. Unfortunately, in this entire region, Pakistan has become a spectacle. There's no other country. I mean, things do happen, differences do take place as far as politics is concerned or the political leaders are concerned, but they're always resolvable. I mean, as always, they say that
let's look at. I will come back to you. Safiullah, we were hearing what's happening across the border. You know, Rahul Gandhi also. You know, of course, it's a case in court on which he's been awarded, as I understand. You know, he's been disqualified.
He's been disqualified.
But we don't see that kind. Of course, he's I mean, he is very much Congress, and we don't see those kind of protests breaking out. We don't see India burning, so to speak. We don't see international condemnation. Unfortunately, why are we unable to prevent that from happening in our country?
It's such a fantastic question, really. And let's just think about it. Let's look at Rahul Gandhi's case. So it was a criminal defamation case under the PPC section 502. We have that as well. I have done countless criminal defamation cases with absolutely no consequence whatsoever. Now Rahul Gandhi he said that criminals share the last name Modi, and he was referring to a couple of major criminals who did have the name Modi, and perhaps his insinuation, it was implied that the Prime Minister is also a criminal. And based on an implication, lower court, this is not a high court, it's not the Supreme Court of India, just a lower court gave an order against him. Based on that order, he's already been disqualified.
And he's has a right to appeal also.
I mean, there's a and he's going straight to the High Court. He's appealing it. There's a process of law. Till then, he's been disqualified. The entire Congress, which is the second largest party in India right now, is supporting the legal process and empowering the courts. Now, let's look at Pakistan. Arrest warrants after close to 50 summons go out. And one man says, no, I am not going to go to the court. If anything, the court should come to me.
Exactly.
They should have video links. In fact, he never went to the court. Eventually, even when he went, he decided that he was going to stay in his car. And now that same judge has turned his non-bailable warrants into bailable warrants. Today, this development took place. Zafar Iqbal is the name of the ATC judge. And this is the stark contrast. When he goes to the court, he comes with his mob of people, or like thousands and thousands of them, who break open the court doors. Nobody talks about that. Who break windows. And nobody's able to stop any of this from happening.
And then when the state acts, reacts to that kind of, that kind of, what is it, criminal conduct, clearly.
Criminal conduct.
And cases are registered. There is a process of law that then, then it's about victimization. It's about, political parties.
And Mahrukh, in this kind of a situation, we expect, and once again I say this as a lawyer, because lawyers love elections because that's when they get the most cases, right?
Okay.
I have historically made the most money when there are election times.
Okay.
That's when people come to us, because everybody files a case. In this time, when one case is unresolvable by the Supreme Court, by the anti-terrorism courts, by the entire state machinery, and by all the political parties, they expect that they would be able to deal with 3,000 cases that would suddenly be filed. Because obviously everybody challenges the RO's decision. And keeping in mind that an RO is a judicial officer, we are already seeing what's happening with a special judge of an anti-terrorism court. What do we think is going to happen to an ordinary magistrate who says, no, I reject this ticket by a PTI candidate? A precedence has already been set, and based on that precedence, I simply cannot imagine peaceful elections. We've seen in Karachi when PTI lost, 8 people died. So what,
And
do
also
we want like a bloodbath in Pakistan now?
Jamshed Sahab, also they don't accept any results that where they lose. So I mean, you know, were they to not get the 2/3 majority that the former Prime Minister says he's going to get, then of course they would not accept the results.
I think, Mahrukh, the only thing that we've not learned in the past 75 years is political grace. If I talk about the European history as how Europe has evolved into that center of civility, modernity, politics, and everything that they can be good in the world, I'm talking about their social welfare state systems. There were 2 documents, or rather 2 covenants, that were very important in the modern European history. One was Magna Carta in 1215, and the other was the Treaty of Westphalia. And every student of political history, or every student of law, in fact, knows about these. And after these 2 covenants, I think Europe did actually progress. So it's the fact of the matter is that when you've had a system of democracy, no matter how fractured it has been in the past 75 years, you at least need to stick on to the perimeters of it. The only thing that economy wants right now, or economy will ever want in the future, would be political uncertainty. Why aren't international investors lending you money right now? Why aren't international multinational corporations and international transnational corporations investing into your country? Because they'd know that they'd be investing in maybe $1 billion, $2 billion, and ultimately they would see their factory burnt. So today, the very idea of politics is for these politicians to be mature. Even if we think that maybe Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf has only been in power since 3.5 years, but it has been in politics since the past 26-7 years. So I think that today in this era of modernity, even if today we think that our democratic decisions will be taken out on the streets, we're mistaken, number one. And number second, even for example, if we hypothetically assume that fine, there can be a threat to someone's life, and the Constitution entirely entitles to the protection of privacy, to the protection of life to a particular person. But you cannot go to a court because of that, and you can organize, or you can think of organizing a mega jalsa in Lahore, and that would be having hundreds of thousands of people without any security apparatus. So I think our politicians need to set their directions right, and equally said for the government as well. I think the government is going a bit too harsh on political activism by the opposition as well. Democracies emerge through, I think, dialogue.
But the problem for the government, again, like we were talking about, is that they have to enforce the law. How do they deal with this kind of vandalism? How do they deal with, you know, personal property of people being, destroyed literally outside? We saw what happened outside the courts, you know, when the former Prime Minister chooses to mobilize. What the protesters do? What do they do with that kind? Invariably, let me go to Javed Sahab on this. Javed Sahab, invariably when the government chooses to act or react against this kind of criminal conduct, then, you know, it is said that they are perhaps, you know, like Jamshed Sahab is saying, discouraging or coming too hard on political activism. Then what does the government do?
I think we need to understand that the freedom of expression has to be with certain amount of responsibility. Even in a country like France, which is a very advanced and developed society in every respect, about 1 million people were on the road, out on the road on the issue of pension reforms. President Macron wanted to raise the retirement age from 62 years to 64 years. Now there have been demonstrations, and some of them have been very violent. And President Macron appealed to the people that you have a right to come out and exercise your right to freedom of expression, etc. But don't be violent. So I think Pakistan, which is definitely has seen periods of democracy and periods of dictatorship, and we have not been fully developed as a democratic society. So, I mean, as far as the political demonstrations are concerned, they do get violent, be that Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf or Jamiat Ulama-e-Islam, Pakistan Muslim League, Pakistan People's Party, or any other religious political party. So PTI is not an exception. There have been instances in the past as well. There have been demonstrations. There have been damage to the property. And I think that can't be really condoned or exonerated as far as responsible politics is concerned. But as far as the government is concerned, I think they need to understand whatever kind of precedents they are going to set today, they will be replicated and they will be repeated in the future as well. Be those decisions.
How do you look at this kind of, how do you look at the kind of statements that are coming from across the, internationally we are seeing, statements come from people, we've seen statements come from perhaps people who are, as far as the government has also said, should not be interfering in Pakistani politics, should not be interfering in our, country's affairs. How do you look at that overall? How do you view that kind of interference?
Mahrukh, again, there is a paradox. I think in any given situation or a given day, in any under any government's rule, there have been foreign statements, be that when Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf is in a position which was accusing America as the sponsor of the conspiracy against Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf's government when they were dislodged through vote of no confidence. Now they are trying to get cozier with Washington. They are trying to lobby in America and trying to make the American senators or the policymakers issue statements in their favor. But these examples were rampant in the past as well. Whenever there was I take the example of Pakistan People's Party. When they were out in the wilderness, they were trying to lobby in Washington through their own set of people over there, including some of the very famous players in Washington. And the same was the case with Pakistan Muslim League. So I think PTI is not an exception as far as lobbying is concerned. But as far as America is concerned, being the sole superpower, being the so-called guarantor of the civil liberties and the basic human rights, they have always been making statements about the evolving political situation in the developing countries, and Pakistan is no exception. So I think we shouldn't be surprised when somebody speaks from Washington about Pakistan's prevailing political situation, Mahrukh.
Okay, fair enough. Safiullah, do you agree? You think that this kind of interference, we have of course seen the government come out and talk about the kind of interference that we've seen. Of course, it doesn't seem to, it won't have much effect on our, domestic politics. But overall, it seems to be rather, wanting.
I find it interesting because, Pakistan is an important country. It's a country of 240 million people, and it's a nuclear state, and it has always had an important position geopolitically. But I also find the fact that everybody seems to be talking about the internal politics of Pakistan with a lot of gusto, a lot of attention to detail, constantly talking about how the state should be behaving, how they should treat protesters in a particular protest.
Are they also saying this about France? I don't think
exactly.
so.
So I feel like this is what I'm saying. I feel like this is a little strange. The fact that very senior politicians are talking about micro events in Pakistan. The police going to issue arrest warrants, enforce arrest warrants in one household is not a topic for international political discussion.
Exactly.
And yet the fact that it is being discussed politically shows that Pakistan, unfortunately, and Pakistani politicians, unfortunately, have expanded their tentacles to foreign forces. They understand that this is happening. In fact, I will come back to something very interesting that I myself thought was quite odd, which is that when the police was outside Zaman Park, Imran Khan's first address was not to the people of Pakistan, but instead to Sky News. If you recall, he gave an interview. And it was after that interview that he actually spoke to his own people and to PTI. He first appealed to the British public, and for the longest time, the fact that Imran Khan was surrounded in his house was being put up on BBC. at a time when many other things were happening, at a time internationally when, for instance, a Russian jet had downed an American drone. The fact that Imran Khan was still the headline was more interesting for me, and this shows that there are power groups within other countries who want to exert their influence. And why not? I also think about why this would not be the case, because Imran Khan's entire strategy is to appease to overseas Pakistanis. He is very popular amongst the overseas Pakistanis, there's no doubt about it. There's a large number of people who live outside of Pakistan who are now exercising whatever links they have with politicians. In fact, the physicians of the US and PTI have officially written to the government of USA asking them to intervene. Very bad taste for overseas Pakistanis asking another government to intervene. But this is what's happened, and the fact that PTI seems to be encouraging this behavior is what's possibly causing,
and it also shows
it
shows a complete disregard for how it makes Pakistan look internationally, as it did with the Cipher conspiracy, which fell on its own feet. Jamshed Saab, unfortunately we're running out of time, but I need your comments overall on this.
The only comments that I would have, Mahrukh, would be at the end that, do you remember there was a boy whose death became very much critical and debatable? He was called Zile Shah, I think.
Yes, yes.
Now, today, which politician feels a lot for Zile Shah? I don't think anyone. Which politician amongst PTI, rather than only politically sort of taking that death to their capital or political advantage, or maybe any other politician from another party taking them, taking the death to his or her political advantage, that's the irony of having such a fractured idea of democracy. I'd simply say one thing at the end. The voter out there might be uneducated, but he's not ignorant. And I think that respecting the right of vote is something that these politicians collectively need to realize. And I think today it calls for an all-parties conference, a political charter once again of the revival of democracy, because democracy is nowhere to be seen, and the revival of economy as well. This is all that I'd like to comment on.
Javed Saab, your comments?
Mahrukh, I think the only way forward is dialogue, and dialogue, nothing else. Until and unless there's a sanity, as far as the political parties are concerned, they need to sit together. They can negotiate.
But Javed Saab, do you think, I mean, just to interject here, do you think that that sanity, you know, of course, all parties conference happened earlier also, minus the opposition, mainly being the PTI, which seems to be the center of the kind of, you know, acrimony at this time that we are seeing. It doesn't seem to hold much for the country at this time. Do you expect them to attend at all?
Absolutely, because Imran Khan must be regretting a lot losing two very important provinces, Punjab and KP. That was a very naive decision. Even leaving the National Assembly of Pakistan, he must have come to realize that those were the blunders he committed, and now he is in the wilderness. The only option left for Imran Khan is negotiations and nothing else. Otherwise, there's a very long wilderness for him.
Right. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for joining us. On that note, unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you for being with us, Barrister Safiullah Ghauri, Saif, Jamshed, Baryar, Javed Jadoon Saab. Thank you for joining us. Of course, overall, it seems to be some kind of dialogue seems to be the order of the day. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be something that's likely to happen in the coming days, and the kind of aggressive politics, the kind of antagonistic politics that we are unfortunately seeing at this time, the trend seems to be continuing, and some sort of, like Javed Saab said also, sanity must prevail at this time to restore some kind of order in this constant upheaval that is trying, you know, the opposition is trying to create one after the other. Let's hope that that can happen. Let's hope that the opposition will see that October also is not that far off, and they will be able to have their elections when they do, and then if they are as popular as they say that they are, they will have that mandate. Let's hope that that patience will prevail. Thank you so much for joining us today on this.